Glenn, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So what do we learn from Intel's earnings? How does this one report change what apparently has been a very strong positive sentiment about building their own foundries, getting back on track? What did you learn in the earnings?
Well, I think the earnings itself shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. PC sales were up, so the chips that they sold to the PC makers did well. Data center was a pretty rough year for data centers, and that revenue was down. So not much surprise there. I think really what people were tuning into was the future, because it's got a new CEO now, and he's come back to turn the company around. He's got his work cut out for him, and you heard a lot of skepticism, and I think that's where you see the downside on the stock today and last night was the skepticism that this could really turn around. But no real surprises on the numbers, I don't think.
In terms of that skepticism, I mean, obviously, from an investor standpoint, Intel has not been a rewarding place to be. From a real fundamental standpoint, we've seen very publicly some of the mistakes the company has made in its supply chain and delays. What, in your mind, is kind of the biggest risk going forward that they can't actually execute this plan that they've got?
Well, it certainly has taken a hit from competitors. AMD has stepped up the pressure. ARM has stepped up the pressure, and now you see a lot of consolidation. NVIDIA buying ARM and AMD buying Xilinx, and these kinds of competitive pressures have really, in some ways, put Intel back on its heels. But I have to say, Pat Gelsinger has his work cut out for him as he tries to turn the company around. That's going to be his biggest challenge. But there are a number of fronts here. Manufacturing. How do they eventually get their 7-nanometer processing up to speed while the others are also innovating? This is a race where nobody's slowing down, so it's going to be tough. I have to say, though, I don't share the skepticism as much as some others do. I think there's some real potential here, and I think we're going to see good things out of Intel, to be honest.
What will those good things look like? How will we know that they are making progress on this? I mean, the street apparently is not happy with bottom and top line earnings beats today, so apparently that's not going to be our gauge. What is it going to be that we can say, okay, Intel's on the right track?
It is going to be how they progress in getting the name recognition back. How is Intel going to build that reputation back? It's a highly respected name. Most people who are going to buy a computer, even though you and I don't buy products from Intel, we buy products with Intel products inside. So Intel has been a respected name. If somebody's going to buy a PC, if it says it's got an Intel processor in it, sort of gives it some extra credence. So that credence has been eroded in the past several years, and let's see what they can do to get that credence back. New product introductions, like they just announced with the new Xeon processor. Is that enough to counter what AMD also announced, which was a pretty potent product? And where ARM and NVIDIA have gone, this is a highly competitive space, and we have to see how Intel is going to do to get some of that mojo back.
The data center declines obviously still a big hang up in the numbers and in the story too. Is there a certain point where that should be kind of understood by the market, or is that still going to be an overhang if they can't tourniquet that bleeding?
Data center, everybody in the data center business suffered. Dell's data center business suffered, Cisco suffered, HPE has suffered. Anybody in the data center business had a really rough year. We see some turnaround on that, and spending is returning as we come out of the pandemic. I don't think it's going to be a huge spending increase, but it is coming back, and Intel will benefit, and everybody else who serves that will benefit. But where we see some even more potential is in edge computing. What we have with data centers and cloud is everything's kind of lumped into these big rooms. But now with edge computing and Internet of Things, this stuff's everywhere. And there's a huge potential out there, and nobody really owns that yet. You could say some of the low power devices like ARM have an advantage, but everybody can play here, and Intel has to chase that as well.